I'll add it to our Playmakers. Let's see here.
It's slow charging.
Damn it, what did I have that playlist saved as? Damn it.
Well, mine was saved as NFL Radio.
Now I gotta search for the damn thing. For my list of shit here. Oh, NFL Talk. That's what it is. Boom. NFL Talk. Okay.
Nice.
All right. Ready for the intro whenever you are.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. What do you mean? I don't have an intro planned.
I thought you had the song. Yes? No?
Well, I don't right now because I have that clip from the coach
No.
keyed up. I think that's just play it on
how
mute.
good it's gonna come through.
Pilates reformer.
That sounds
Now,
fine.
this is the
We're not talking about Pilates though.
No, we're not. Okay, you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know how good it's gonna come through my speaker.
Yeah, it sounds pretty cheesy.
There we do it, huh? Welcome, folks, to the new episode of the Playmakers. Today is Wednesday, 12/18/24, and before we get into a plethora of NFL news and updates, we're just 3 weeks away from the NFL playoffs starting. I need to introduce my co-host for the night, the dick to my trickle, Big J. How are you doing?
How we doing over there, Beard? Jay's doing pretty good over here.
Oh, we are doing fine. We are doing good. So let's start off with some breaking news that was made aware to us today, coming out of the NFC. Kirk Cousins getting benched for the rookie Penix. Big J, what were your thoughts on that? Given that Cousins just signed that big 4-year deal with the Falcons this offseason, $100 million guaranteed money.
Yeah, it's. I was surprised that first of all that they drafted Penix after signing Kirk Cousins to that big contract. But if you just look at the black and white, the Falcons, they beat the Raiders on Monday night, which snapped a 4-game losing streak. But Kirk Cousins was just 11 for 17 for 112 yards and a touchdown and a pick. But he has 9 interceptions and just 1 touchdown pass in his last 5 games. And he didn't throw on first down in the entire first half on Monday night. And the first time that occurred in his entire 13-year career. The only time that he actually threw on first down was to open the second half. And guess what happened? Resulted in interception by one of our dare I say, favorite Las Vegas Raiders, Robert Spillane, number 41.
Spillane, love that guy. Love the visor.
Absolutely. But honestly, yeah, go ahead.
Honestly, I was shocked. I mean, they're still in a tight battle for the division. They're only 1 game behind Tampa Bay. But it makes sense to me given the fact that this week Atlanta plays the Giants. So technically you can classify that as a preseason. Everybody's walked over New York this year. Um, so I mean, you can figure it. It's a pretty good litmus test um, that you can get a pretty good read on Penix moving forward against the Giants. If he does good, and you can see some qualities that Raheem Morris likes in a quarterback, then obviously you can stick with him moving forward. But obviously, if Penix sneaks up the joint, then obviously I think they can go back to Cousins and maybe try to rectify the season because they go Giants, Commanders, Panthers to close out the season. Of course, Tampa ends with Dallas, Carolina, and the Saints. So you figure Tampa's going to at least win two of those games. So Atlanta would, in theory, have to win their final three to make up that one game. I think they would still be a half a game behind because didn't I believe Tampa won both games against Atlanta this year. Um, so, I mean, maybe Tampa loses two out of those last three. I'm not sure, but I think I mean, to me, even though I was shocked at the decision this late in the year, I think it comes at a good time. Um, going against the Giants.
Well, and that's a good point to make is the fact that the Giants is the team that they're playing this weekend. Giants are 2-12. So like you were saying, the Giants have been susceptible, even to the Falcons are good enough to be able to make mistakes against the Giants and still overcome them, just because the Giants are flip flopping back and forth. They're going with Drew Lock again this weekend after going with old Danny DeVito, or whatever his name is, last weekend, and obviously that didn't pan out very well. But I mean, again, Kirk Cousins, he's 36 years old. He's completing 64% of his passes. He has 18 touchdowns, but a league high 16 interceptions. And he also has 12 fumbles, which ties for the most in the league with old Baker Mayfield down there in Tampa. But, Michael Penix, he's 24. He led the Washington Huskies to national championship game last season. And then, of course, the Falcons selected him number 8 in April's NFL draft. And during his college career, he completed 64.5% of his passes with 36 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, and that was his final year with the Huskies. And his 4,903 passing yards were the most in the nation. So I think he definitely has a skill level, and I believe they're smart enough to give him some safe passes. And it sounds like from what they were saying during the broadcast that Penix has been really involved with Kirk Cousins and the game plan, and even when he's standing on the sidelines, he's been involved. So I think he's been more involved, and that's part of why they want to go ahead and make this change. But I mean, the Falcons are 7-7. I mean, they're not exactly, I mean, you might as well make the change now because you want to know what you have for next year. You want to, I mean, even if it doesn't matter what they do, whether they make the playoffs or not, I think they're at least saying they want to put some out there to give, free agents next year. Say, hey, you know what? This Penix kid looked pretty good in his last 3 games of the season. They might be getting something together in Atlanta. I'm going to go sign with them. If you're a receiver, running back, whatever. So there's a litany of reasons that they want to go ahead and make this change. But honestly, Kirk Cousins, I mean, he's been a decent player his whole career. He's been fairly solid. Turnovers has always been one of his bugaboos. But I think he's a little long in the tooth. And I mean, yeah, it's weird making the change 3 weeks left in the season, but same token too, you don't want to go this entire year and not really know what you have in your rookie quarterback that you spent a number 8 draft pick on.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, but that begs the question: what is Atlanta going to do with the remaining contract of Cousins? He was guaranteed 62.5 million this year, 27.5 for next year, and even 10 for 2026, and of course 2027 is zero against the
Yeah,
cap. So I mean, obviously not in the same situation that Denver was in with Russell Wilson, but obviously, I mean, that's a lot of cap hit.
Yeah, it is. Most of that money comes off the books by 2026. So they just have to bite the bullet next year, whether Kirk Cousins is still there or not. But that's what you got to do. And that's the thing. It's that was the confusing part for me is signing him to a huge contract, knowing that you were going to draft a quarterback with your first pick. So to me, that was a mistake that they made. But if they can make the most of it and hopefully keep Kirk Cousins around, help him guide Michael Penix, before letting him sign a veteran contract with some other team that needs a good quality veteran leadership in the locker room. But they need to take advantage of that, and hopefully it works out for them. All right, let's move on.
We shall see
oh, good.
if Penix can join the likes of Caleb Williams, Owen Daniels, and I don't know why there's a delay for some reason.
Well, there's times when your voice sounds like you're in slow motion.
But yeah, we should. That's weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, we'll move forward and talk about the Kansas City Chiefs next. Patrick Mahomes suffered a high ankle sprain Sunday versus the Cleveland Browns. And again, another victory. Chiefs are sitting 13-1. So it begs the question: what are the Chiefs going to do with Patrick Mahomes? Still fighting for the number one seed, obviously. The Bills nipping at their heels at 11-3. However, Kansas City does have a tough final three games, closing out the season at Houston this Saturday, Pittsburgh on Christmas Day, and then finish up the year at Denver.
Actually,
BJ, what
yeah.
do you think is the Chiefs' best course of action here with Mahomes these final 3 weeks?
Well, Mahomes listed as full participant in Tuesday's practice and today's. So it doesn't seem like there's any restrictions as far as that's concerned. But to get the answer on that, let's go to head coach Andy Reid and see what he had to say about Carson Wentz's possibility of him playing in the place of Patrick Mahomes.
We have full confidence in Carson. If he has to step in and play, then I think everybody, coaches and players, have full confidence that he can go in and do a nice job.
So Andy Reid and his coaching staff, obviously Andy Reid, top coach in the NFL, and he's got all of his ducks in a row like he always does, and it doesn't matter. Just like we saw with Chad Henne last year with the Chiefs, or I shouldn't say last year, but years prior, that you could just plug in Chad Henne, anybody else at quarterback, and he'll call the right plays for him. So there's no issue there. But obviously, yeah, Houston's a big game. Houston has a lot to play for, as well as the Chiefs. The Chiefs, they're 13-1. They've clinched the AFC West championship and a playoff spot, but they're still chasing that one seed. Well, obviously, they want that first round bye and a home field advantage, which for them there in Kansas City is huge. They would clinch. They would clinch that spot with 2 wins in their final 3 games. So technically, they could lose to the Texans but still get a top seed by beating the Steelers and the Broncos in their last 2 games.
Yeah, that's a definite possibility. But we have to look at I'm all in favor of letting Wentz earn that paycheck. We've only seen him in the fourth quarter, against Cleveland this last week. I was a big fan of him when he was in Philly. Obviously, he caught a little bit of the injury bug, and then of course they shipped him out with the with the surgence of Jalen Hurts. But just looking at it, if Kansas City, manages to lose, these last, lose to Houston, say they lose a close game to Pittsburgh, they're sitting 13-3 on the Bills. Bills play New England, the Jets, and then New England again to close out their final 3 games. So you have to figure that the Bills are going to win out. So they're going to be sitting at 14-3, and that final game against Denver, which there are a lot of people saying that if Denver wins this Thursday against the Chargers, that Sean Payton might sit the majority of their starters that last week against Kansas City. I don't buy that one bit. Rookie quarterback. You're trying to get reps. Looking towards the playoffs. I don't see that. I don't see Sean Payton sitting anybody. To lose any kind of momentum that Denver may make. But that final game at Denver could be a huge game for the Kansas City Chiefs, Big J.
Yeah, I think I don't think it's going to come to that for them, and I also don't agree that Sean Payton isn't the kind that's going to sit starters. Drew Brees played in every game, whether it was meaningful or not. When Sean Payton was the head coach, I don't see that happening, especially with a rookie quarterback. And you want to be hitting on all cylinders, and clearly the offense still has issues, defense still has issues. I could see some defenders possibly taking a game off if they're banged up or whatever. If we don't need that win, but I don't see. I see us just playing ball like we normally do. Try to get that momentum going for that first round playoff game. That will most likely be on the road at Pittsburgh or Baltimore. We'll get into that later, though. But let's go ahead and move on to let's talk real quick here, Beard, about the MVP race. Who are your top? Let's say your top three in the MVP hunt.
Well, honestly, my top three starts and ends with Josh Allen. I think you're a damn fool if you have an MVP vote this year. If you don't vote for Josh Allen, I think you're just not a. I mean, you're just not a fan of what the guy can do. Um, Number two, I would say probably Saquon Barkley, even though he didn't have a very good game last week. He was held pretty much in check. I think he only had 69 yards on 23 carries, um,
Nice.
if I remember correctly. And then, of course, people and people are gonna throw Lamar Jackson's name. His name's always been in there. Two-time MVP with yet still nothing to show for it in the postseason. Same as Josh Allen, but you look at Josh Allen's stats this year: 3,400 yards, 25 touchdowns, only five interceptions, 64% completion percentage. That's just through the air. Now, when he's running the ball, he's got 91 carries, 484 yards, 11 touchdowns, only one fumble. Now, the big thing that Josh Allen is doing this year has than what he hasn't done his previous 6 years in the NFL is he's not turning the ball over. Like I said, only five interceptions, which he's only had. Let me find my stat here. He's had double-digit interceptions 5 of the last 6 years, which he's only been in the league 6 total years, counting or 7 years counting this year. So 5 of the last 6 years he's had double-digit interceptions. Again, sometimes costly turnovers in big-time situations, but the guy balls out when it comes to the playoffs. Now you can throw you can throw into the mix that he can't get it done against Mahomes, but he has played phenomenal against Kansas City 2 out of the last 3 years when they've gone against them in the playoffs. Everybody remembers 13 seconds down by 7. Obviously, that could go on McDermott for kicking that ball deep and giving Mahomes the full 13 seconds instead of kicking it short. And then, of course, you got Brandon Bass missing the field goal last year. But right now, I think my front runner is Josh Allen.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I think Lamar Jackson is a close second. I would say Lamar Jackson is going for back-to-back MVPs, and it would be his third overall. And third, I kind of was really hoping for him silently to myself that Jared Goff was more of a factor. I put him third. But let me throw some facts at you.
That's a good call. You can't go wrong with that pick with Jared Goff, what he's done with that offense this year.
So the Bills have scored 90 points in the last 2 weeks, with Josh Allen accounting for 10 total touchdowns during that stretch. He became the first player in league history to score 3 rushing touchdowns and 3 passing touchdowns in a game just last week. Josh Allen has the best QBR in the league, which is 79.3. He is 6th with 25 touchdown passes along with 12 rushing touchdowns. He has 3 more games, including 2 against the Patriots, to solidify his MVP case even further. Now, the Bills have beaten the Lions, who is as of right now the NFC's best team all season, and the Chiefs, who hold the best record in the league, which also add to the case for Josh Allen to get his first MVP award.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, the Bills have beat some really good competition this year. Just like you mentioned, Detroit, and as well given Kansas City their only loss. I mean, we both know Kansas City is a 500 football team this year, but they have been, they have been lucky. Basically, seems like every week they're coming up with new ways to win games. But that's what good teams do. I mean, there isn't a better coach team in the league right now than an Andy Reid football team. Um, but another thing, another good friend of the show, Rex Ryan, always compares Josh Allen to the arm of John Elway, which us as Bronco fans, I can't get enough of that. But another question to you, Big J. If Josh Allen secures his MVP this year, do you think the Bills can get over the hump this year in the playoffs and maybe make it to a Super Bowl?
Honestly, I don't know. They seem to be getting better as time goes on. I would love to see another 42 Super Bowl between the Bills and Lions. That would be entertaining for sure. So I'd be okay with that. And honestly, outside the MVP, I don't think that's going to have any factor in it. But I do think that I think they have that charge. I honestly was not expecting them to be as good as they are this year because they've lost key pieces, especially receivers that they had the last couple of years. But they have really impressed me this season. And yeah, Josh Allen. I mean, he's that team goes as far as he's going to take him. And so, cross your fingers, that he stays healthy and makes a good playoff run because they are definitely a fun team to watch.
And they are. Now moving forward, back to the NFC, the Eagles. Uh, Again, some people are claiming they're the best team in the NFC. Not buying that right now, currently at this moment, but they are sitting number 2 overall, um, with the same record as the Detroit Lions, which we'll get to right after this. But some drama coming out of the locker room last year. They put some of the critics to bed with this last win, um, 27-13 win over Pittsburgh this last week. Um, but the majority of the drama was coming from A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, not targeted very much in their last previous games. And of course, Jalen Hurts only had 108 yards last week, and that was his 3rd consecutive week under 180 total yards passing. Obviously, until they played Pittsburgh. And then, of course, Jalen Hurts started the interview post game after Pittsburgh with the reporter saying that's what you wanted to see. So, Big J, do you believe in the Philadelphia Eagles?
I do, and I don't. They haven't. To me, they still haven't impressed me. I just I don't know if you've seen the sideline drama that's gone on with Nick Sirianni, their head coach, and then even this last game, it was after a defensive lineman got a personal foul, and the head coach and one of the other coaches, I'm assuming he's a defensive line coach, looked like they were having a verbal altercation there on the sidelines, and I think it was more that Sirianni was going to go chew his ass for doing something stupid as he did in that moment in the game, especially on a punt. But I think Sirianni was going to go do that, and that coach had already taken care of it, even though that player you could clearly see was almost laughing right behind that other coach. So whether he knew that was going on or not, I don't know. But for sure, there's definitely to touch more on that drama. There's that's been going on, and I don't think one game gets rid of that drama. But AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, as you said, both voiced their frustrations about the Eagles' passing game following last week's narrow home win over the Carolina Panthers, in which Hurts finished with just 108 yards, like you said, and that is the third consecutive week that he was held under 180 yards. Now, Brown's comments that passing, quote unquote passing, was the issue on offense, and that there was very little sideline communication with Jalen Hurts to get things fixed, and that led Philadelphia defensive end Brandon Graham's assertion that Hurts and Brown were no longer close like they once were. Yeah, I mean, it might as well be a soap opera at this point. But that set off a media firestorm that consumed much of the week for the team, and Brown said he and Hurts did let the team know that they're on the same page and there's nothing wrong or anything like that. So inside the Eagles practice facility, Devontae Smith said that there's been a lot of tough and uncomfortable conversation. But Brown spoke extra meetings, that they had extra meetings between players and coaches that emphasized improving details of communication in the passing game. And then, of course, all that helped fuel a highly efficient passing performance against the Steelers, with Jalen Hurts going 25 of 32 for 290 yards and 2 touchdowns. Now, Sirianni, again, having that altercation on the sidelines, I don't know how that looks. To me, that looks bad that one of the other coaches was kind of getting in his face in a sense. I mean, that's how it appeared. But it just seems like there's a lot of stuff. And when you win, yeah, there's no drama. But let's wait and see if they have an ugly loss or a loss that they shouldn't, a game that they shouldn't lose here in the last 3 and see what's going to bubble up, because I still think there's something there. There's too much stuff going on for there not to be anything.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. I mean, even though they're winning this year, which is something they didn't do last year, losing 7 out of their last 8 games last year, limping into the playoffs, and getting booted by Tampa wild card round. But one thing that I do think that this team has going for it rather, is I don't think there's a better front four, defensive front in the NFL than Philly's front four. I mean, they're made up of just big men that get after the quarterback, they plug the running holes. And another thing I think this team will do, that putting drama aside, just putting the team on paper, looking at what they have on the field, that I think, even if Philly doesn't necessarily get the 1 seed, out of the NFC, I think this team can travel, and I think they can travel and win. Given the amount of weapons they have offensively, they have Saquon Barkley, which is something that they were they were in dire need of a running attack last year. Obviously, they took care of that in the offseason with the addition of Saquon. But right now they are tied with Detroit at both 12-2. And then just another point, that last game against Pittsburgh, Jalen Hurts, 25 for 32, 290 yards and 2 tutties. But I do think, putting drama aside, and again, I do agree. I think there's something else there, and usually happens in the playoffs. Teams, biggest problems get exposed against good teams, because you're not going to play any slouches come playoff time. And I think that could be the Eagles' downfall. Do I think they're a top 5 team in the NFC? Yeah, probably. I would probably give them that. But best team in the NFC, I just don't see it. And I'm with you, Big J. They haven't blown my socks off with a lot of stuff that they've done this year.
Well, and if they can do what they did against Pittsburgh, which was play ball control offense, that's why they beat Pittsburgh and on the scoreboard and in the stat sheet as soundly as they did, because of their time of possession. If you look at the time of possession that they had in the second half alone, the Philadelphia Eagles offense kept the ball longer in the second half than the Steelers had the entire 4 quarters. So that right there just goes to show you when the running game's working, and obviously going 25 to 32, obviously the passing game was working, and it wasn't like big, deep shots. It's, going with Saquon Barkley, running the ball, running play action off of that. Doing the read option with Jalen Hurts that he's so good at running. Taking those fourth and shorts and doing the old tush push to keep drives alive. And that's the thing. If they can play that ball control offense, they can win anywhere and against anybody.
Yeah. I do agree with that. And just another point on Sirianni, something that we haven't talked about. Week 6 of the NFL season this year, Sirianni got some heat for mouthing off to some fans in the stands. Me personally, I'm not exactly a huge fan of Sirianni. I don't know what it is, just his demeanor. Something about him. I just don't. I'm not his biggest fan. Um, but then, the thing that was comical about it, that he, mouthed off to some fans in the stands. He goes to his press conference and he has his kids with him. so he's, kind of the double-edged sword there. He wants to mouth off, make a fool of himself to some fans in the stands, and then, brings his kids into the press conference, to try to say, what, I'm not this bad guy, I'm a family guy, da da da. But yeah, definitely something about him, just doesn't sit well with me.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Let's move on. Let's talk about a coach and a team that we do like. Dan Campbell up there with the Detroit Lions. Let's talk about the Detroit Lions, Frank or Beard, and yeah, absolutely. You just got to watch out for them kneecaps. But let's talk about the Lions. Now they are, like as you said, tied for the best record in the NFC, arguably the best team in the NFC. But they have a lot of injury issues.
They do. They have 17 total players that are on the injured list right now. Let me throw some facts at you. 8 of the Lions um, uh, defenders rank in the top 40 of defenders in the NFL. All 8 of those guys are on IR. 52% of their defensive starters and backups are on IR. So it begs the question, this team has one of the best offenses in the league, averaging well over 30 points per game. But it begs the question. Obviously, we've seen teams in the past, and obviously we're Bronco fans. We know what happens when you have a top tier offense and a kind of a lackadaisical defense. When you get into those big games, you get into some of those shootouts, you kind of have trouble. Um, but I do think this offense can keep up.
Oh, sorry, sorry, sorry about
What are you
that.
laughing at? Lackadaisical? Lackadaisical? Is that what you're talking about? That's a Coach Bryce idiism. You should know that.
Yes, exactly.
but
Oh,
anyway, like I was saying, they're still able to score points. Put up 42 points against Buffalo. Now, granted, Buffalo's not known for their defense. Um, but still, I still think they can run at any track meet. And then, they have, I think a top 5 coach in Dan Campbell. Ever since he was hired, about 4 years ago. Um, you know, I've, he's had my vote. The guy's a hell of a competitor. Not afraid to go for it on 4th down. Obviously the onside kick in the 4th quarter with 12 minutes left. Obviously, he's thinking he can. Obviously you have to steal a possession there because your defense, wasn't going to stop Buffalo from going up and down the field. Obviously, hindsight's 2020. He said that in his press conference that if he knew Buffalo was going to return it to the 3rd or to the 3-yard line, obviously, yeah, probably wouldn't have done that. But I just know, I just don't know how Detroit's going to make it through this postseason with so many detrimental injuries on that defensive side.
Yeah, and to key off of that, defensive tackle Liam McNeil went on the IR yesterday due to his knee injury that he suffered over the weekend. Some good news, defensive end Aiden Hutchinson, who is on IR with a broken fibula tibia, he said on Tuesday in an appearance on a podcast that he's continuing to eye a return to the field in the Super Bowl, should the Lions make it that far. He says, and I quote, "I'm at the mark, and I'm on track for my goal for returning in time for the Super Bowl. I keep telling all the boys when I see them in the facility, I'm like, you guys just got to get there, and I promise you, I'm going to be back." And then also another injury from the weekend's game is half of their big backfield duo is David Montgomery. Coach Dan Campbell said on Wednesday that Montgomery, which he hurt his knee during the last game, he's seeking a third opinion on his MCL injury, and that is why the team has not yet placed him on injured reserve, but he is out for the immediate future. And they'll have to lean on a couple other younger backs. Obviously, they've got Jahmyr Gibbs, but they have a rookie running back and then another running back that they'll have to lean on as well. But obviously, Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get the fair share of the workload for sure. Frank must be coming to us from Afghanistan as we appear to be having some technical difficulties with the beard there. I think, I don't know if he's getting bombed over there in Iraq or in Afghanistan, taking a leak, something. But let's go ahead and move on. We're going to talk a little bit about a team that has, and it's not going to be easy, or it's going to be easy to figure out who we're talking about here. But a team that really just couldn't get going this season. There was so many high hopes last year, and then obviously the fourth play of the game, Aaron Rodgers goes down, and that season is pretty much lost because of that. This season, Aaron Rodgers is back, looking better than ever, and they come in and they just lay egg after egg after egg, even after they made a big trade to get Devontae Adams, which I thought was going to help turn them around. Still hasn't done that. So Beard, let me ask you, what do you think is up with the Jets this year?
Well, honestly, I think it starts and ends with Woody Johnson. We were told last year this team was a quarterback away. Obviously, easy to say when you got Aaron Rodgers on the mend, coming after that torn Achilles that happened in the first game of the season. But I just think Woody Johnson is petty. Thought he had the fix, but he didn't. Got rid of Robert Saleh, which I think was one of the biggest mistakes that he made this year. And I mean putting the full workload on Jeff Ulbrich, the defensive coordinator who was upgraded to interim head coach, and then let's just call it as we see it. The defense went downhill right after Robert Saleh was fired. Jeff Ulbrich took over. I mean, it's tough to have a defensive coordinator to try to balance his workload between trying to oversee the entire team and then also put his input in at defensive coordinator. Obviously, Nathaniel Hackett being offensive coordinator, that was a freaking disaster. And but I think it starts with Woody Johnson. Some of the moves that he made this year. Like I said, I think it starts and ends with him, and then that firing of Robert Saleh.
Yeah, they fired Robert Saleh. They also fired general manager Joe Douglas earlier in the season. And of course, Aaron Rodgers, there was a lot of issues, questions surrounding him, or where the B word was even used. The bench was getting tossed around the media But then obviously he received a vote of confidence from the interim head coach, Jeff Ulbrich. But since then, Rodgers has delivered his 2 most prolific passing days of the season. And then suddenly there's an upsurge in support from fans and some media types to run it back with Rodgers next year, proclaiming that he is their best bridge option at that position. But I agree with you 100%. The defense took a huge step back, and that was honestly kind of shocking to me because I just they have the players that even just changing defensive coordinators, your players didn't change. But obviously, Robert Saleh, he was in fact calling the defensive sets. It showed because they were just a shell of themselves from what they were, basically a dominating defense. And their offense definitely took a step forward after Saleh got fired, which obviously after Saleh got fired, they took Hackett off of play calling duties because he is a hack. So they improved offensively at that point, but their offense still hasn't really hit their stride. They've put up good numbers here the last couple weeks. But yeah, if they definitely had a defense to go with what they've done the last 2 weeks on offense, yeah, they would definitely be a force in the NFL. But yeah, they're a mess right now, and obviously Jeff Ulbrich is going to be gone at the end of the year. It's going to be a clean house in there, and so who knows what's going to happen with the Jets. But certainly feel for those fans. Those Jets haven't had a winner in a really, really long time.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I mean, you have to feel for him, but I mean, somebody's got to get through to Woody Johnson. They need a real head coach, and if they do decide to run him back with Rodgers, I'm all for it. I mean, obviously the guy, um, I mean, he's showing glimpses that he can still play, but I don't think you really classify Rodgers as being a leader. Whether you're going to bring somebody else in that can be that team leader, or if that duty's going to fall onto the coach, which I think a little bit does have to fall onto the coach because everybody talks about creating culture and a culture change. Especially talking about Denver, obviously with Sean Payton. You look at Kansas City with Andy Reid. You look at Dan Campbell, prime example in Detroit. You take a loser for 40 years, 4 years into his tenure. I mean, he has them as one of the best teams in the NFL. But I think Woody Johnson. I don't know what his deal is. I mean, he said in an interview, they think this team is built to win now, which I mean, you look at their roster top to bottom. I mean, they have a really good roster. Their wide receiver core is good. They have Brees Hall in the backfield, which is a stud halfback. And they have, I mean, they have an aging quarterback in Aaron Rodgers that can still sling the ball up and down the field, no doubt. But I think they need to bring somebody in that can be that leader, that can be that culture change, to bring this team together.
Well, I'll tell you what, somebody that is available that could change that culture there is Mike Singletary. And I don't know if you remember him when he was the head coach there in San Francisco, and he had a little issue with now I've completely spaced on his name. Vernon
Vernon Davis.
Vernon Davis, thank you. But Vernon Davis, and then he was in the press
Can't coach
conference
him.
saying, "Can't coach him, can't win with him." Exactly. Well, that guy's available, and you know what? He would change the culture. But speaking about the 49ers and can't win with them, don't want them. Let's talk a little bit, very briefly, because this annoys the hell out of me. Let's talk about Devondre Campbell when he basically quit mid-game last week.
Oh my God, this guy.
Yeah, so the San Francisco 49ers president of football operations and general manager John Lynch issued a statement, and he said, "We've suspended Devondre Campbell Sr. for 3 games due to conduct detrimental to the team. We will have no further comment on the matter." How that guy still has a job is beyond me.
Yeah, if I was in charge of that team, he would have been cut before that game was over. To be honest with you, he was
Amen.
quoted by Coach Shanahan saying he didn't want to play today. Again, that was quoted by Coach Shanahan. So it begs the question: if you didn't want to play today, why the hell did you dress? I don't get it. I mean, I, I mean, I get people have mental problems, da da da. But again, that brings you back to the same point: why dress? So his career moving forward, I think, is in serious jeopardy because fellow players, teammates, players, fans especially, fans across the league, no one's ever going to forget what he did. And there's no excuse for that.
Yeah, he might find a home in the UFL, but again, you quit once, you're going to quit again. And it's only a matter of time before he does it. All right, let's go ahead and kick that lazy bastard to the side, and let's talk a little bit about the Denver Broncos, Beard.
That's about all the time he deserves, to be honest.
Exactly. Tomorrow night, Thursday night, is the first time ever that a game has been flexed to a Thursday night game. The Broncos are the first team to have 2 Thursday games immediately after a Sunday game since 1926. And of course, you got 2 young quarterbacks going head to head, Bo Nix and Justin Herbert.
Yeah, you're 100% right. We got the battle of the ducks, so to speak.
Yeah, that's true. Both Oregon Ducks prodigies.
Exactly. But I mean, we're going to talk about the Broncos starts and ends with Coach Sean Payton. What this guy has done with this team these last 2 years, making the difficult choice to, probably wasn't difficult for him, but from a financial standpoint, difficult choice to part ways with Russell Wilson, taking that big cap hit, and look at the season that he's been able to put together with that significant cap hit, and found his guy in the draft, Bo Nix, 60 college starts, by far most from any professional player coming into the NFL. And then that defense run by Vance Joseph, which the last couple of games, defense has been giving up as far as yards and then points. Obviously, I mean we got to think back to Cleveland, but defense has a couple injuries. We see how much of a key cog Riley Moss is. Even though he's white, I mean the guy can cover, the guy can run. But I think this team, I mean, I think we're a little far fetched to be talking about Super Bowl. But I think as far as playoffs, getting 1 win, maybe 2, but I don't know. I just have a feeling that this team is going to do something special, and it's going to start this year.
Well, this game tomorrow night is huge. According to the NFL, a loss by Denver would leave its probability at 85% with remaining games at Cincinnati on December 28th and then Kansas City in Denver on Week 18, the final game of the regular season. Bo Nix and the Broncos have won 4 straight, and they would return to the playoffs for the first time since 2015. That's a hell of a drought. The Broncos have the second longest playoff drought behind the before mentioned New York Jets. But even though a win in one of the next 3 games extends Denver's season for at least a week, that's not the way that Bo Nix is looking at it. He says we've got 3 games to win 3 and go into the playoffs and win a Super Bowl. Now, Nix, this last game, had his first 3 interception game as a pro against the Indianapolis Colts, and Denver just produced 7 points in its first 9 drives against the Colts. But Bo Nix bounced back, led the Broncos to 17 points in the final 20 minutes for a 31-13 scoreboard blowout. And of course, a lot of that had to do with Jonathan Taylor's dropped touchdown, which basically I felt would have put the game away at that point for the Colts. But it turned the tides and went to the Broncos' side. But Bo Nix earned high praise from his head coach, Sean Payton, where Payton said later in the game, when we needed him, he didn't flinch. There's a maturity and a moxie about him that I love, and I think that it's contagious to the team. And when you have that at the quarterback position, you're in every game. And when you don't have it, it's pretty difficult because deep down in their bellies, they know that's not the case. And so they got a good one there in Denver with Bo Nix, and he's definitely the guy that they've been looking for, that team, that fan base has been yearning for since Peyton Manning was there.
I mean, not even Peyton Manning. I mean, I mean, you look at Peyton when he came to Denver. I mean, everybody knew, he had a handful of years. Honestly, we haven't had a quote unquote franchise quarterback. I mean, going back to John Elway, and then this storied franchise. I mean, that is insane to think about. But I, I 100% agree with you, Big J. I think Bo Nix is a guy, the guy that we've been looking for. Um, given the numbers that he put up, against Indy, he might have taken a step back or two in offensive rookie of the year race. But I think these last 3 games are going to be huge. Um, moving forward. Um, but I mean, even looking at how the playoff bracket sits right now, Denver's sitting at the 6th seed. They would match up if the playoffs started today. Obviously, they'd match up against Pittsburgh. And there is a very, even though Denver did play Pittsburgh week 2 of the season, which they lost, it was Justin Fields led Pittsburgh Steelers team. But again, a close game. But let me come back to that. You look at Denver's losses this year, with the exception of Baltimore being the only one that we've lost, pretty handily. I think, this team shows, a hell of a lot of poise. And again, that goes back to Sean Payton with this culture change that he's doing. When you look at what he did in New Orleans with Drew Brees and that team, I mean, taking a team that was, quote unquote called the Aints back in the day, even back when Arch Manning was there for that matter, and turn that franchise, turn that city around, and you can see glimpses of what he used to do that here in Denver.
Yeah, you definitely see his product on the field, and a lot of people are giving Sean Payton a lot of accolades, and you can see it in Bo Nix. Basically, we have nearly the same team that we had last year with Russell Wilson. The only difference is now we have a different quarterback, and look how much the offense is flourishing now. Whereas last year our offense was stuck in molasses most of the season, basically. But let's look on the other side of the ball against the Broncos is the Chargers. Their lack of playmakers at the offensive skill positions. It's really been apparent over the last 3 games, especially when you got their top running back, J.K. Dobbins, on the injured reserve because of a knee injury. Now, if you look at the stats, the Chargers ran the ball on 44% of its plays before the Dobbins injury. And now that rate has decreased to 33% of its snaps against Atlanta, Kansas City, and Tampa Bay. 3 teams. Obviously, Kansas City has a good run defense, but Atlanta, Tampa Bay are teams that you can run the ball against, and they just didn't do it. But also, on top of that, Justin Herbert's dealing with a sprained left ankle. And while it's not as severe as when he sprained his ankle at Carolina September 15th, but it has led to the offensive coordinator, who's Greg Roman, leaving certain plays off of his call sheet. And Herbert says that the past couple of games have felt like playoff games where they're important and they have that environment where any moment something big can happen. And he said that's on us to be able to handle the environment, continue to go through it, and realize the importance of these games. The Chargers, with a win, would have a 97% probability of making the playoffs versus 73% if they lose. And the Chargers, after the Bronco game, they will close the season out with road games against the New England Patriots and Las Vegas Raiders. Obviously, they will be favored in both of those games.
I don't have it here in my notes, but is Lad McConkey healthy for LA?
I believe he is, yes. He was banged up and was questionable, I believe, but he was. I don't believe he's on the injured list, on the injury report for this week. Well, obviously, we'll know for sure tomorrow. Actually, I think they announced their inactives. He's not inactive. I know that much.
Yeah. I mean, I knew he was banged up, but I wasn't sure if he was a full participant in practice this week or not.
Yeah, I'm sure he's going to be there. I'll see as we move further down with the Chargers. I'll see if I can find anything about their injury report.
Okay. And then going back to something that I had touched on earlier, as far as playoff positioning right now as we speak. Um, the Chargers are sitting at the 7th seed. Denver and LA did swap seeds this last week, with Denver beating Indianapolis and the Chargers getting throttled by Tampa Bay 40-17. to move Denver up to the 6th seed. Now, right now, if the playoffs started today, Denver would be at Pittsburgh. And I don't know about you, Bronco fans alike, I can't think of a better first round playoff matchup than this new Denver offense led by Bo Nix versus Russell Wilson and that Pittsburgh defense.
Yeah, that's a good point. I couldn't find anything about the Chargers injury report. Obviously, the official one, I believe, comes out tomorrow morning. As the one I found for the Broncos was just an estimation, so nothing official yet. But to lastly touch on the Chargers and Broncos matchup here, the Chargers are looking to sweep the season series for the first time since 2010, and then obviously that would give them the tiebreaker should we have the same record as them. And the Bolts go into Week 16 as the AFC 7th seed, which means at this point would be a trip to Buffalo or Kansas City in the wild card round. Now, real quick, how can the Broncos clinch a playoff berth? Well, a couple ways. We win the game. Broncos win the game, they're in the playoffs. Or, should they lose the game, they would need a Cincinnati loss against the Browns, the Colts to lose against the Tennessee Titans, and a Miami Dolphins loss to the San Francisco 49ers. Now, the Chargers can clinch a playoff berth with a win, plus Indianapolis losing to Tennessee and Miami also losing to San Francisco. So this game, obviously, as you can see, Indianapolis and Miami both needing to lose for both the Broncos and the Chargers. But the main thing, one of those two teams has to win this game. They both have to win it, but one of them's going to.
Yeah. I mean, it's you know, people were talking about that game last week against Indy, given it was a home game, but the biggest game in Denver since, you know, the Peyton Manning led Broncos AFC Championship against New England, which I had the pleasure of seeing in person. One, you know, if not one of the best games that I've ever seen. That 2-point conversion hold, you know, still gives me chills when I think about it. But a huge game for both sides. Obviously, a win and you're in. I hate leaving it to chance. I hate, you know, say the Broncos lose. I hate, you know, having to see other teams lose to help us get in. I'd rather us just win, focus on Cincinnati, and then off to Kansas City. You know, I mean, I would love to see Denver win these last 3 games. You know, head into the playoffs, whatever seed they would be in, with you know, they said they've won 4 in a row. That would make it 7 straight victories. And I mean, Denver would be a really tough out. And I don't think a lot of teams want to face that Denver defense. You look at Nick Benito, 2 pick sixes the last 2 games. He's a linebacker, folks, not a cornerback. He's a linebacker with 2 pick sixes in the last 2 games. Well, I mean, I guess the last one was technically a fumble return for a touchdown.
I was going to say
it was a backwards pass.
Yeah, I was going to say to split hairs.
It as a pick six. He caught the ball. It was a pick six in my mind.
Yeah, and it was definitely an exciting play. I know where I was watching the game, it was only one person here watching the game, and he was just going apeshit when that happened, and didn't even hear anything what was going on the TV because he was jumping for joy and screaming because old Nick Benito with another pick six. So let's go ahead and head into the key matchups for this weekend, Beard. To touch on what's up for this weekend is there are 3 weeks left in the 2024 NFL regular season. And the playoff picture is even clearer. 9 teams have been eliminated from the postseason. 7 have already clinched. The Bills, Chiefs, and Texans have already won their division. The Lions and Vikings are tied for first in the NFC North, while the Eagles are close to the NFC East crown. The NFC South and the NFC West are still up for grabs. And get this, if the Chargers win Thursday night and the Colts, Dolphins, Bengals lose on Sunday, AFC field will be locked. And according to Ilias Sports Bureau, there has never been an instance where one conference had every playoff spot clinched with 2 weeks left in the season. And that is since the playoffs expanded to 10 teams in 1978. So first matchup, we did touch on this briefly. So I'll just touch on it one more time. Is the Broncos at the Chargers. Their first matchup this season was Week 6 in Denver, and the Chargers came out with a 23-16 victory. Second matchup, the Texans at the Chiefs. And again, I know we touched on this. The Chiefs clinch a 1 seed with a win and a Buffalo Bills loss. Steelers at Ravens. That when they played each other in Week 10, Pittsburgh came away with an 18-16 victory, and the Steelers clinched their division with a win in that head-to-head matchup there. The Eagles travel to Washington to face the Redskin Commanders. And in Week 10, Philly beat them 26-18. That score looks closer than the game really was, but Philly clinches the division with the win there. And then the Saints travel to Green Bay, the frozen tundra of Lambeau Field, where Green Bay can clinch a playoff berth with a victory over the New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, those are definitely some games to be glued to. Obviously, the Denver Chargers game is a Thursday night primetime special. Only game on TV. But I mean, a lot of good games uh, to look at this week. Um, minus the Broncos Chargers game, the one game that I'll be paying special attention to will be the Kansas City Houston game. Again, given that Houston hasn't had the best luck against Kansas City, but Kansas City has not looked like the Chiefs of old, and I say old, meaning the last handful of years. Obviously, they've been in what's it been five straight AFC Championship games.
Six
Maybe
straight.
it's six straight.
Yep. Every season that Mahomes has been the starting quarterback for the Chiefs, they've made it to the AFC Championship game.
So obviously, six straight AFC.
Oh, sorry, I thought my mic was muted.
Six straight AFC Championship games. It's going to be a huge game for Houston. Obviously, they're not getting a whole lot of competition in their division. They're just looking for any kind of momentum moving forward into the playoffs. We also got to get a game pick for the Broncos Chargers game as well, Big J. But we can touch on that before we sign off.
Yeah, absolutely,
But
absolutely, we can.
minus the Broncos and Chargers game, I think the game to watch is going to be that Houston Kansas City game. I don't know if any people watched and played with a high ankle sprain, severely painful. Even though Mahomes can play off as much as he wants, that is something painful. Obviously, he's not as mobile with a high ankle sprain, and with their atrocious offensive line performance that they've had this year. Well, actually, the last 2 years, to be perfectly honest with you. I mean, Mahomes is taking a snap and then basically running for his life. So I'll be interested to see how that game turns out against Houston.
Yeah, and it's kind of one of those things too, where Houston already has their division locked up, and now obviously their seeding isn't set yet. But if you look at the conference standings, Houston sitting at 9-5. The next closest, I mean, honestly, they can't drop any further. They can't drop down any further. The best thing they could hope for is a Pittsburgh loss to Baltimore, which then, of course, that would put Baltimore ahead of Houston, no matter what Houston does against Kansas City. So there's a good possibility, a good and tasty possibility that Houston probably isn't going to show their full hand against the Chiefs this weekend. Again, they cannot move up any further in the standings unless they win 3 straight games and Pittsburgh and or Baltimore loses 2 out of 3. Obviously, Baltimore, Pittsburgh play each other this weekend, so it's hard for me to think that. I was just going to say
down either.
Right, they can't drop down. I'm sorry, I think I said move up. I meant drop down, but the I just don't think Houston's going to show their hand because they would have a home game for the wild card weekend, and then if they should be the lowest seed, which obviously them being the 4 seed, should they be the lowest seed, they'd be traveling to Kansas City supposedly if they have that 1 seed, which we're just going to assume that they will. Houston will have to travel to Kansas City and play them again, and that's only 5 weeks away. So I don't think Houston's going to completely show their hand. I think they're going to try to keep some wrinkles, but they're gonna try some things against the Chiefs. But I just don't see it being. I don't want to say that it's not going to be Houston's best effort, but I don't think they're looking at this like we need to go in there and win this game. So that one to me isn't the game that's standing out for my 2 cents. It's the Steelers at the Ravens. That one is going to be a slobber knocker. Those are two big rivals, and both sides are known for defense. I forget if Baltimore has real grass now. I know they went real grass back to fake grass and back to real grass. I don't know if they have fake grass now or not. But here's the thing: Texans at Chiefs, real grass. Let's assume the Ravens have real grass. Steelers at Ravens, real grass. Eagles at Commanders, real grass. Saints at Packers, real grass. So except for the Thursday night game, all the exciting games that we need to look out for are on real grass, the way football's meant to be played.
100% right. Yeah, I agree with you more. And then that also brings us something interesting that you talked about with Houston not showing their full plethora of offensive plays, and that brings me back to the Denver Broncos. Just to touch on this again, we've seen a decline in production from one Javonte Williams, and the offense has kind of taken a step back the last couple of weeks. Stagnant offense. Do you think that's something Sean Payton is kind of doing? He doesn't want to put a whole lot out there, kind of use some plays that he's used throughout the year. I mean, we've seen a ton of wide receiver screens the last handful of weeks, plays that, that we've seen, obviously everybody in the NFL has seen. Do you think that Coach Payton is kind of game planning, moving forward, trying not to show a whole lot of what this Broncos offense is going to be in the playoffs?
I honestly don't think so. I think a lot of that has to do with Bo Nix making the decision, read pass option, where he can either hand it off or throw that quick smoke screen. But also those quick smoke screens and bubble screens help get Bo Nix comfortable, get him throwing that ball, get him comfortable, and obviously it helps keep the defense at bay too a little bit, especially with that if the pass rush or blitzing is going on. And obviously we've seen that play work so many times. It was one of Peyton Manning's staples when he was in Denver, was that smoke screen. I still remember opening night, Sunday night, or rather Thursday night against the Baltimore Ravens in Denver, and we ran a smoke screen to Demaryius Thomas, rest in peace, DT, and he took her to the house. And those plays they work, and the receivers we have are good blockers up front, and I just think that helps get Bo comfortable. I do think that Javonte is taking a back seat. I would rather have Jaleel McLaughlin in there. He seems to be more of the burst back, and I think bigger plays comes off of that. And if you look at what they have in Detroit with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs is the big play guy. When there's a big run, it's Jahmyr Gibbs. And that seems to be what Denver has as well between Javonte and Jaleel. Javonte's the head knocker. He's going to get you those tough yards in between the hash, but Jaleel is where the big plays can happen, and I think that's what our offense can be, is we have that threat of basically we have so many receivers and solid running backs, especially with Jaleel, that can break a big play at any moment's notice. I didn't mean to go rambling on there like I did, but yeah, that's what I think.
I mean, you also can't forget about Audric Estime too. I mean, when he gets the ball, now granted, first part of the season he had some fumbling issues, which seems to have been taken care of here as of late. But I think he's a burst too. I mean, a good hard downhill runner that punishes those opposing players when they try to wrap up on him.
Yeah, and I think he's getting quality time when he does get in. He's only getting a select handful of plays, but I think that's beneficial for him. It's given him that taste, and I expect him to be maybe possibly our lead back next year. Javonte Williams, we'll see what his future is in Denver. But obviously, since his torn ACL, he definitely is not the same back that he was before that injury, unfortunately. As I definitely love some Javonte Williams, but yeah, he's a shell of his former self just from a couple years ago.
And I mean, Sean Payton has been quoted too as saying it's tough to get equal carries for those three
Yes.
backs
They
that he
all
can
deserve it,
attack.
without a doubt. They all deserve it.
They do. I mean, they're all good, tough runners. Um, so before we wrap this up, let's get to some game picks here. Obviously, with the game that's next up on the slate is obviously the Broncos and the Chargers. I have the Broncos uh, split in the series. Obviously, this year with the Chargers, I have them winning 24-17. I think Bo Nix is going to shrug off that three interception performance that he had against the Colts. I think this offense is going to start off strong. Now, granted, in that week 6 matchup, we spotted him 20 points, scored 16 in the fourth quarter to make it look like a game, even though the game necessarily wasn't as close as the final score showed. Um, the Denver offense finally picked it up in the fourth quarter. But I think Denver's going to start hot, like they did, similar to what they did against New Orleans when they played in the last Thursday night game. But I got the Broncos 24-17.
Well, I didn't know we were making game picks, so I did not make any game picks. So I can go ahead and shoot from the hip here. Apparently, Barry McCocken, our producer, Barry, didn't give me the play sheet here that we were going to be going off of. So I'll throw that in Barry's face. But
My bad,
I'll
Joe.
say,
My bad, Joe.
but I obviously want the Broncos to win. I really don't. I really don't. I mean, I can't say that the Broncos aren't going to win that game. But the Chargers, at home, and the Broncos fans have been traveling well, and that's the players have noticed that. I think it's going to be a close game because I hadn't really been able to give it a whole lot of thought as far as the score would go. I'm going to say whoever wins only wins by 3. I'll say 20-17. Whoever wins is going to win by 3.
I read you. Yeah, that's a production fault right there. that I ceased to send to you earlier.
Yeah,
But that's
yeah.
my
Barry's
that's
like,
my
it's
bad.
right. It's early in the season for us here on Brofest Radio. So we're getting through our preseason here, if you will.
Another quick note that I wanted to touch on to get your opinion on Big J before we sign off here tonight is ideally in a perfect world, moving forward here with the NFL playoffs, legitimate chance. Do you think Denver has the opportunity? Obviously, I mean that's a dumb question. I think they do have the opportunity to move up to the 5 seed. But I mean, you have to look at matchups, and I guess when you get in the playoffs, it doesn't matter. If you want to make it to the Super Bowl, you want to make it to the next round. You have to beat the team that won. But mathematically speaking, do you think Denver has the opportunity to move up to the 5 seed and then potentially play Houston in that first round matchup?
No, I do not. The problem, the reason why I don't, is that I don't foresee Baltimore or Pittsburgh. Obviously, somebody's going to lose one. So if Pittsburgh were to beat Baltimore this weekend, let's say, and Denver wins, Denver moves ahead of Baltimore to the 5 seed. Now, if Baltimore wins, that puts Denver, and Denver wins, that puts Denver tied with Pittsburgh. Now, obviously, we'd be fighting, we would be rooting in a sense for Kansas City when they play Pittsburgh the following week on Christmas Day. So there is a chance that Denver could move up to the 5 seed. That would honestly, I think that would open a lot of eyes. There is a possibility of that because Baltimore and Pittsburgh have tough teams in front of them. But hey, you also have to look at Denver. The Chargers tomorrow night is going to be a tough game. Obviously at Cincinnati. Cincinnati, their record doesn't signify how good that team really is. With Joe Burrow, they're in every game. And then, of course, you got Kansas City Week 18. If Kansas City doesn't have anything to play for and they sit most of their starters, yeah, you hope that we'll handle them no problem because basically we did the first time around in Kansas City. But there's you got to look at the game right in front of you, and right now that's the Chargers and Cincinnati and Kansas City. Neither one of those is going to be a cakewalk. There's no cakewalks in the NFL. Let's face it. Last week against Indianapolis should have been a cakewalk, and without Jonathan Taylor shoving his head up his ass, we would have lost that game. So
that was a definite game changer. Was that 7-point swing right there?
Absolutely, and just we went on. We scored 24 unanswered after that, and that was the end of the game. That was it. And the Colts didn't score a single point after that fumble either. So it is realistic that we could move up to the 5 seed. If you're asking me if it's realistic that we win our last 3 games, I'm gonna say probably not. I just don't see. I mean, if Denver wins their last 3 games, I think that's a huge springboard going into the playoffs. And who knows what can happen. But if we get Riley Moss back, I guess he started limited practice this week, so hopefully he'll be back for the Cincinnati game, or maybe just hold off until the playoffs. But Abrams Drain, our rookie cornerback, played very well against the Colts, and I think that's a different game against the Browns if he's starting over Levi Wallace. Not to step back too many weeks ago, but I'm still irked, whatever you want to call it, about the amount of yards that we gave up to the damn Cleveland Browns. But
he wasn't even within 15 yards of Jerry Jeudy on the majority of those long pass plays.
And why
he just got lost.
Why they waited so long to put him, or to pull Levi and put Abrams Drain in, which they didn't do towards the end of the fourth quarter. But him getting the start last week against the Colts, he'll be getting the start again this weekend, or I should say tomorrow, against the Chargers. PS2 is going to be matched up with Ladd McConkey. Quentin Johnson, another big target. Palmer is another big target for Justin Herbert. The one area that Denver's defense continually struggles at is covering the tight end. And off the top of my head, I don't even know who the Chargers. Oh, Disley. Disley is their tight end, and he's a stud too. So Herbert's. It's going to be a lot of hard work for them, but Denver's defense, they can't come out like they did against the Colts. They can't have a first half like that. Every day, every game from this point forward is a playoff game for them, and they can't take a half off because you start playing these really good teams, just like the Chargers fighting for a playoff spot. With the exception of Cincinnati, the Chiefs can be still fighting for that 1 seed. So you start playing these good teams, these playoff teams. You can't take a first half off like they did against the Colts, like they've done with so many teams this year, where they've taken it off. And even the first game against the Chargers, we were getting smoked for most of the game, and we didn't do anything till the fourth quarter. I mean, it was 20-0 at halftime. We were down, and then the final score ended up being 23-16 because we scored 16 points in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it was 20-0 going into the fourth quarter.
Okay, so so you look at that, and you can't do that against quality playoff bound teams, and obviously the Chargers are going to be a playoff team. But the Steelers, the Ravens, they both have a tiebreaker against us. So the only way we can get ahead of them is by having a better record than them. We cannot tie them. So Pittsburgh could lose to Baltimore, could lose to Kansas City. Obviously, at that point, Kansas City is the 1 seed, and that would lock it in for them. And obviously that puts the Broncos at that point, assuming Denver wins tomorrow night and against the Bengals the following Saturday, that puts them 1 game ahead of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Of course, that also puts Denver at 11 wins. I can't even tell you the last time Denver had double-digit wins. So, but in all honesty, 1 game at a time. I hope we look better tomorrow night than we did against the Colts. But we definitely need to be more consistent. And if Denver wants to make some noise in the playoffs, they're going to have to clean that part up. We've done really good with penalties, but we definitely have to clean up the defense, giving up too many damn big plays. I mean, the Colts came into that game, they were ranked 31st in third down conversions And on their opening drive, they had 4 third down conversions over 10 yards, and they converted every single one of them. And this is a team who was damn near dead last in third down conversions. And 2 of them, they ran the ball on 3rd and 10 or 3rd and whatever it was, 3rd and long, and they ran the ball and got a first down. I mean, that's the kind of stuff you can't have happen. You got to get off the field on 3rd down. And our defense needs to be able to step up and do that.
Yeah, and it won't be the last time that we talk about it. Especially playoff football, how crucial third down conversion is, whether you're on offense or the defensive side. That is just a huge stat that you can't overlook. And just like you were saying, the third and long run of the ball. That should be, I would say a 5% success rate if you're on defense, to get a first down out of that. And we just can't do it. One more thing, that I wanted to touch on is that, one thing that Denver has going for them, and same goes for the majority of the playoff teams, but with the exception of Buffalo and Houston, but Denver has played every playoff team that is currently in the race right now. So again, that is, you've been quoted before, Big J. It is tough to beat the same team twice, let alone 3 times in a season. So that is another thing that Denver has going for it. Say they make the playoffs, say they get to that first round. They're playing familiar opponents, and then double-sided coin. The team you're playing against can say that same thing too.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point to make for sure.
Well, I think that about wraps up our show here tonight, folks. Join us next Wednesday, which will be on Christmas Day. There will be some football going on Christmas Day. A couple of these games that we had talked about here in the future. We'll also wrap up games that happen Sunday. This will be a live episode coming from YouTube, as both of us will be in the same state and as well as the same house.
Ooh, saucy.
So a little tasty treat there for our listeners. So join us next week, 12/25/24, for a live edition of the Playmakers with Big J and the Beard. Thank you guys for joining us today, and hope you guys learned a little something and can join us in our journey of just this great sport that we try to get some information on, try to make it fun. Nothing brings me more joy than talking football with my big brother. So once again, this has been the Beard, and for my partner in crime, Big J, my big bro, this has been the Playmakers. God bless football.
Amen.
Great Scott!
I didn't see that.